The moment Connor's hand touched her face, Elena knew something was wrong. She had dreamed of this night for 12 years. Standing in the Silver Ridge ceremonial hall, 500 wolves watching, her mother's wedding dress flowing like moonlight around her ankles. The dress still smelled faintly of lavender, of hope, of a time when the Blackwood name meant something. Connor's fingers were cold against her cheek. They had always been cold, she realized. Even when they were children, and he would hold her hand during pack runs, his touch carried winter in it. She had loved him anyway. Loved him with the blind faith of a girl who believed the mate bond would fix everything. That underneath his silence and his sharp edges, there was warmth waiting for her. His gray eyes met hers. The ceremonial words should come next. The blessing. The bite that would seal them together forever. Instead, his thumb traced her cheekbone almost tenderly, and he smiled. It was not a kind smile. Connor Hayes, Alpha of Silver Ridge. His voice rang through the hall, clear as a death knell. Reject you, Elena Blackwood, as my mate and Luna. The bond shattered. Elena had heard rejected wolves describe it before. A snap, they said. Like a twig breaking. They were wrong. It was not a snap. It was a blade, white-hot and serrated, dragging through her chest, her stomach, her spine. It was every nerve in her body catching fire at once. She heard herself scream, felt her knees crack against the marble floor. The world tilted sideways, and all she could see were shoes. Hundreds of polished shoes, and not one of them moving toward her. Someone laughed. The sound bounced off the vaulted ceiling, multiplied, became a chorus. Not everyone was laughing, but enough. Enough to let her know exactly what she was worth to them. Nothing. She was worth nothing. The Blackwood bloodline is cursed. Connor's voice floated above her, casual now, almost bored. I won't pollute my heirs with it. The elders have agreed that my union with Vera Sinclair will better serve the pack's future. Vera. Of course. Elena forced her head up, her vision swimming with tears and pain. Vera Sinclair stood beside Connor now, her red dress like a wound against the white marble, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't look at Elena. She didn't need to. Her victory was complete. Remove her. Connor had already turned away, his hand finding Vera's waist. The ceremony will proceed with my true bride. Hands grabbed Elena's arms. Guards. They lifted her like she weighed nothing, like she was trash being cleared before the real event could begin. Her feet dragged across the floor, leaving scuff marks on marble that had been polished for this night. For her night. She tried to find her mother in the crowd. Margaret Blackwood had been seated in the third row, wearing her best blue dress, her thin face bright with pride. But the faces blurred together now, and the pain made it impossible to focus, and then the great doors slammed shut behind her, and she was outside in the cold. The guards dropped her on the stone steps. Don't come back, one of them said. Alpha's orders. They left her there, curled on the steps like a wounded animal. Above her, the moon hung fat and full, mocking her with its beauty. Elena didn't remember driving home. One moment she was on the steps of the ceremonial hall, the next she was stumbling through the front door of the small cottage she shared with her mother. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn the knob. Mom, her voice came out cracked, barely human. Mom, She stopped. Margaret Blackwood lay on the kitchen floor, one hand still reaching toward the phone on the counter. Her skin was gray. Her lips were blue. The only sign of life was the shallow, rattling rise of her chest. No. Elena dropped to her knees beside her mother, hands hovering uselessly. No, no, no. Mom. Mom, wake up. Please wake up. Margaret's eyes fluttered. Didn't open. Elena grabbed the phone and dialed the pack healer. Her fingers were slick with sweat, kept slipping on the buttons. Pick up. Pick up. Pick up. Pack Medical Services. The voice was bored, efficient. This is Elena Blackwood. My mother collapsed. She's barely breathing. I need. Blackwood. A pause. The sound of typing. I'm sorry. We have a directive from the elders. No pack resources are to be allocated to Blackwood family members effective immediately. The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds, random and meaningless, because they couldn't possibly mean what she thought they meant. She's dying. Elena's voice broke. Please. She's dying. The directive is clear. You've been exiled. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone in her hand. Then she threw it across the room, heard it shatter against the wall, and felt nothing. There was no room left in her for anything but terror. She turned back to her mother. Margaret's breathing was worse now, each inhale a wet, desperate sound. Without pack healers, without the medicines only they could provide, she would be dead by morning. Elena pulled her mother's head into her lap and screamed. The knock came 20 minutes later. Elena opened the door to find healer Marcus standing on her porch. He was old, gray-haired, with kind eyes that had always reminded her of her father. He had treated her childhood fevers, set her broken arm when she fell from a tree at 8. Now those kind eyes wouldn't meet hers. I heard about Margaret. He clutched his medical bag like a shield. I wanted to explain. In person. Then help her. Elena grabbed his arm, tried to pull him inside. Please. You've known us my whole life. You knew my father. Please. Marcus pulled back gently, but firmly. I can't, child. The elder decree. Damn the decree. Her voice shattered the quiet night. Somewhere down the street, a dog started barking. She'll die. Do you understand? My mother will die. Marcus's face crumpled with something that might have been guilt. There is one exception. The sanctuary laws. Elena went still. What? If you marry a wolf of standing within 48 hours, and your husband formally claims responsibility for your mother's care, the elders must comply. Sanctuary laws predate the current council. They can't be overwritten. A wolf of standing. Someone with status, with pack membership, with the authority to invoke old laws. Who would marry me? The laugh that escaped her was ugly, broken. I was just rejected in front of 500 people. Connor told everyone my blood is cursed. No wolf in 3 territories would touch me now. Marcus had no answer for that. He pressed a small vial into her hand, painkillers she realized, the weak kind available to humans, and backed away. I'm sorry, Elena. I truly am. He left her standing in the doorway, clutching a bottle of pills that would do nothing, watching his taillights disappear down the dark road. The hours crawled by. Elena sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, counting her breaths. Each one felt like a small miracle. Each pause between them felt like the end of the world. 48 hours. She had 48 hours to find a husband. The rejected Omega. The cursed bloodline. The woman whose own fated mate had thrown her away like garbage in front of everyone who mattered. What wolf would possibly want her? None. The answer was none. Unless the wolf didn't know. Unless he wasn't from around here. Unless he was desperate enough to take money instead of status. Elena's head snapped up. Her father's account. The one he'd set up before his death, hidden from the pack's financial oversight, meant for emergencies. She had never touched it. Had almost forgotten it existed. $50,000. She looked at her mother's gray face, her blue lips, her chest barely moving. $50,000 could buy a lot of desperation. Elena stood. Her legs were weak, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and the lingering agony of the broken bond. None of that mattered. Nothing mattered except the woman in that bed. She would drive to the edges of pack territory. Find a rogue bar, a place where wolves with nothing gathered to drink away their sorrows. She would find a man willing to say words he didn't mean for money he needed. She would buy a husband. She would save her mother. Elena grabbed her keys and walked out into the night without looking back. She didn't care who she found. She didn't care what he was. She should have. If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The Red Fong Tavern squatted at the edge of nowhere like a rotting tooth. Elena had driven 2 hours through empty roads and darker thoughts to reach it. No man's land, the wolves called this stretch of territory. Unclaimed. Unwanted. A place where the lost and the lawless gathered to drink and fight and forget whatever had driven them from proper packs. She sat in her car for 5 minutes, watching shadows move behind the grimy windows. Her mother's face floated in her mind, gray skin, blue lips, each breath a battle. 46 hours left. Maybe less. Elena got out of the car. The smell hit her before she reached the door. Stale beer. Old blood. The sharp musk of wolves who had stopped caring about civilization a long time ago. She pushed through the entrance and let her eyes adjust to the dim light. The red fong was exactly what she had expected, and somehow worse. A long wooden bar dominated one wall, tended by a massive bald man with tattoos crawling up his neck. Tables scattered across the floor like broken teeth, occupied by men who looked like they had committed crimes she didn't want to imagine. A jukebox in the corner played something low and twangy, competing with a murmur of rough conversation. Every head turned when she walked in. Elena felt their eyes crawl over her like insects. She was still wearing her mother's wedding dress under her coat, hadn't thought to change, hadn't had time, and even covered. She knew she looked wrong here. Too clean, too soft, too much like prey. She lifted her chin and walked to the bar. "Whiskey," she told the bartender. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. He poured without comment, slid the glass across the scarred wood. His eyes lingered on her face, on the dried tear tracks she hadn't bothered to wipe away, but he said nothing. Small mercies. Elena turned, drink in hand, and surveyed the room. She needed someone who could pass as legitimate. Someone who could stand before the pack elders tomorrow and claim her as his wife without laughing or leering or giving away the transaction underneath. Most of the men here wouldn't qualify. They were too rough, too wild, too obviously broken. A table of rogues near the pool table caught her scanning and took it as invitation. One of them stood, tall, greasy-haired, with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Looking for company, sweetheart?" He sauntered closer. His friends laughed behind him. "I could keep you real warm tonight." Not interested. Wasn't really asking. His hand reached for her arm. Elena stepped back, heart pounding, mentally calculating the distance to the door. She was fast, but not fast enough. Not against a wolf. The lady said no. The voice came from the corner. Low, quiet, carrying an authority that made the greasy rogue freeze mid-reach. Elena looked. Corner booth. Alone. A man sat in the shadows with a glass of whiskey and an expression of absolute stillness. Black hair, slightly too long, falling across a face that might have been handsome before someone had carved a brutal scar from his temple to his jaw. His eyes caught the dim light and reflected it back like gunmetal. He was watching her. She had the unsettling feeling he had been watching her since she walked in. The rogue sneered. "Mind your business, stranger." The scarred man didn't move, didn't blink. "Walk away." Something in those 2 words made the rogue sneer falter. He looked at the man in the booth, really looked, and whatever he saw made him take a step back. Whatever. She's not worth it anyway. He retreated to his table. His friends had stopped laughing. Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She looked at the scarred stranger, trying to read him. Dangerous, that was obvious. The kind of dangerous that made other dangerous men nervous. But there was something else. Something in his posture that spoke of authority despite his worn jacket and faded jeans. He sat like a man used to being obeyed. Like a man who had once commanded rooms far grander than this one. She picked up her whiskey and walked to his booth. He didn't invite her to sit. She sat anyway. Up close, the scar was worse. It wasn't just one wound but several, layered over each other, suggesting injuries that should have killed him. His eyes tracked her movement with predatory focus, but he made no comment. Just waited. Elena took a breath. She had rehearsed this speech during the drive, but now the words felt clumsy in her mouth. "I have a business proposition." One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. He sipped his whiskey. "I need a husband," she continued. "Temporarily. 1 month. Maybe less. You show up tomorrow, say the words, sign the papers. After that, you're free to go. No consummation required. No strings. And in exchange?" His voice was low, rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. It sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. $50,000. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. Half tomorrow. Half when the month ends. The stranger studied her. His expression gave away nothing. No surprise, no greed, no suspicion. He might have been carved from stone for all the reaction he showed. Why? Does it matter? Humor me. Elena hesitated. But time was slipping away, and her mother was dying, and she had no room left for caution. My mother is sick. The pack won't treat her unless I'm married to someone with standing. I was supposed to, her voice caught. She forced herself past it. The marriage I was supposed to have fell through. I have 46 hours to find a replacement or she dies. Fell through. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Interesting choice of words for a rejection. Elena went cold. How do you know about that? Word travels. He swirled his whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Even to places like this. The Blackwood Omega, rejected by Alpha Hayes in front of 500 witnesses. Quite the scandal. She should leave. Right now. She should get up and walk out and find someone else. Someone who didn't know her name or her shame. But there was no one else. And no time. Then you know I'm desperate. She hated how her voice sounded. Small. Broken. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to show up and say words. $50,000 for a few hours of your time. That's the deal. The stranger set down his glass, leaned forward slightly. The movement brought him into the light, and Elena saw more scars, his hands, his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. A man who had survived things that should have killed him. Multiple times. What's your name? He asked. She had prepared for this. Lena. Lena Moore. His mouth curved. It wasn't quite a smile. It was colder than that, knowing in a way that made her skin prickle. You're a terrible liar. Elena's heart stuttered. She opened her mouth to protest, to double down on the lie, but he was already continuing. I'll do it. She blinked. What? Your deal. I accept. Just like that? You're not going to negotiate? Ask for more money. No. Why? Those gunmetal eyes held hers. For a moment, something moved in their depths, something old and angry and patient. Then it was gone, and he was just a scarred stranger in a dive bar again. Let's say I have my own reasons for wanting access to pack territory. He stood, unfolding to a height that made her crane her neck. Tall. Broad. Built like a fighter. We leave now. You can tell me the details on the drive. Wait. Elena stood too, her head spinning. I don't even know your name. Kale. Kale what? Just Kale. What pack are you from? He pulled on a leather jacket that had seen better decades. His expression didn't change, but something in the air around him grew heavier. One that no longer exists. The night air bit at Elena's skin as they stepped outside. She had parked in the back, away from the other cars, some instinct for caution that felt laughably inadequate now. She was about to drive into the darkness with a stranger who killed men's courage with a look and answered questions with riddles. But her mother was dying. And this man, Kale, had said yes. They were halfway across the gravel lot when 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Elena recognized the greasy rogue from inside. He had brought friends. Bigger friends. They spread out in a loose semicircle, blocking the path to her car. Changed my mind. The rogue's smile was ugly now, stripped of any pretense. Think I will have that company after all. Your new friend can watch. Then we'll see how tough he really is. Elena's blood turned to ice. She stepped back instinctively, bumped into Kale's chest. He was solid as a wall and completely still. Last chance, Kale said. His voice hadn't changed. Still low, still calm. Almost bored. Walk away. The rogues laughed. There's 3 of us, Scarface. And one of... Kale moved. Elena didn't see it. Not really. One moment he was standing behind her, the next he was among them. There was a sound like wet branches breaking. A spray of something hot across her face. A scream that cut off mid-breath. Then silence. She blinked, wiped her eyes, looked. 3 bodies lay on the gravel. The greasy rogue's head was turned at an angle that shouldn't exist. The second man's chest was caved in, ribs jutting through his shirt. The third had simply stopped. No visible wound. Just empty eyes staring at the moon. For seconds. Maybe less. Cale hadn't even shifted. He stood among the corpses like a man who had just swatted flies. His breathing was even. His expression hadn't changed. There was blood on his hands, their blood, and he looked down at it with something that might have been annoyance. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her legs had locked, her brain screaming at her to run. But there was nowhere to run to and no point in trying, because if he wanted her dead, she would already be dead. He looked up. Their eyes met across the bodies of 3 men who had been alive 30 seconds ago. You should know what you're buying, Elena Blackwood. Her name. Her real name. He knew it. Had known it all along. The lie she'd told. The name she'd given. He'd seen through it instantly, and said yes anyway.
Why?
What did he want with pack territory? What had happened to his pack? The one that no longer existed. Who was he? Cale stepped over the bodies and walked toward her car.
Come.
Unhurried. Like the violence behind him was already forgotten. Coming. Elena looked at the dead rogues. At the blood drying on the gravel. At the stranger she had just agreed to marry. Then she thought of her mother, gray and gasping in that narrow bed. 45 hours. Maybe less. She followed him to the car. If you're enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. The highway stretched empty and dark ahead of them. Elena drove too fast, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, her mind racing faster than the car. 3 dead men. For seconds. No shift. The stranger sat in her passenger seat like he hadn't just killed 3 wolves with his bare hands. He watched the road ahead, his scarred face unreadable, his bloody hands resting calmly on his thighs. He hadn't even tried to wash them. How do you know my name? Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. Fear and exhaustion and desperation had stripped away any pretense of politeness. Cale didn't look at her. Does it matter? You let me lie to you. Let me think I was fooling you. Then you used my real name like it was nothing. So yes, it matters. How do you know who I am? I know a lot of things. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to pull over and demand the truth, threaten to call off the deal, make him explain who he was and what he wanted, and why he had agreed to marry a stranger for money he hadn't even tried to negotiate. But her mother was dying. 44 hours. Maybe less. She didn't have the luxury of answers. What do you want? She tried a different approach. You said you have reasons for wanting access to pack territory. What reasons? Cale turned his head slightly. In the dim glow of the dashboard, his eyes looked almost silver. I have my reasons for agreeing. They don't concern you. You want a husband to save your mother. I want access to pack territory. We both get what we need. And after? When the month is over? Then I leave. And you never see me again. It should have been reassuring. It wasn't. There was something in his voice when he said it, a finality that suggested he didn't expect to survive whatever he was planning. Elena drove in silence for another mile, chewing on questions she knew he wouldn't answer. Those men back there, she finally said. You killed them like it was nothing. It was nothing. That's not normal. Even for an alpha, that's not. I'm not normal. He said it simply, without pride or shame. A statement of fact. You should know that going in. I am not a good man. I am not a safe man. But I will keep my word. Your mother will receive treatment. The elders will comply with sanctuary law. And when our business is concluded, I will disappear from your life entirely. Elena thought about the bodies in the parking lot. The speed. The efficiency. The complete absence of hesitation. What are you? Cale smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. A ghost. Dawn broke gray and cold over Silver Ridge. The pack's civil chamber was a squat concrete building on the edge of the administrative district. No flowers. No decorations. No guests except the ones Elena dreaded most. She stood in the small antechamber, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her mother's wedding dress balled up in the trunk of her car. There hadn't been time to go home, to change, to do anything except drive and pray and try not to think about the man waiting for her at the altar. Not altar. Podium. This wasn't a ceremony. It was a transaction. Cale emerged from the bathroom, having finally washed the blood from his hands. He had borrowed a jacket from somewhere, dark, plain, almost respectable. With his hair combed back and his expression carefully blank, he could almost pass for civilized. Almost. Ready? He asked.
No.
Not even close. Let's get this over with. The chamber itself was worse than Elena had imagined. Cold fluorescent lights. Plastic chairs. A podium at the front where Elder Marcus waited with a clipboard and a sneer that had been growing since the moment he received Elena's sanctuary claim at 4 a.m. But Marcus wasn't the worst part. Vera Sinclair sat in the front row, her red lips curved in anticipation. Connor stood beside her, arms crossed, his handsome face arranged in an expression of bored contempt. They had come to watch. Of course they had. Vera wouldn't miss the chance to see Elena humiliated again. And Connor wanted to make sure she knew that even in victory, she had lost. That marrying a stranger in a concrete room was nothing compared to what she could have had. What he had taken from her. Elena lifted her chin and walked down the aisle. She felt their eyes on her. Vera's amusement. Connor's irritation. Marcus's disdain. The chamber was empty except for them, but it felt like 500 wolves were watching her fail all over again. Cale fell into step beside her. His presence was strange, terrifying and somehow steadying at the same time. He walked like he owned the room, like the sneers and stares meant nothing, like he had faced far worse than a handful of petty wolves with inflated egos. He probably had. They reached the podium. Marcus looked at them like they were dirt on his shoes. "This is highly irregular," he began. "Sanctuary claims require a husband of standing. This man has no pack affiliation. No documentation. No. The law doesn't require pack affiliation." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "It requires a willing spouse who accepts responsibility for the claimant's family. He's willing. I have witnesses. Proceed." Marcus's jaw tightened. He glanced at Connor, as if seeking permission to refuse. Connor shrugged. "Let her have her pathetic ceremony. It doesn't change anything." Vera laughed softly. The sound was poison. Marcus turned back to his clipboard, visibly unhappy. "Fine. State your names for the record." "Elena Marie Blackwood."
Cale.
Marcus waited. "Full name?"
Cale.
The word dropped like a stone. No elaboration. No apology. Marcus made a note, his pen scratching irritably. "Do you, Elena Blackwood, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband, accepting all responsibilities and bonds therein?" "I do." "Do you, Cale, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife, accepting all responsibilities and bonds therein, including sanctuary obligations to her immediate family?" A pause. Elena held her breath. "I do." "Then, by the authority vested in me by the Silver Ridge Pack Council, I pronounce you married." Marcus slapped the clipboard down. "Sign the papers and get out." No congratulations. No blessings. Just a stack of forms and a pen thrust in their direction. Elena signed.
Cale signed.
It was done. She was married to a stranger. A killer. A ghost. Her mother would live. That was all that mattered. They were almost to the door when Connor moved. He stepped into their path, his eyes fixed on Cale with an intensity that hadn't been there during the ceremony. Something had shifted in his expression. The bored contempt was gone, replaced by something sharper. Suspicion. "Who are you?" Connor's voice was quiet. "Dangerous. I know every rogue within 500 miles of this territory. I've never seen you before." Cale stopped. He was taller than Connor, Elena realized. Broader. But he held himself like he was trying to take up less space, like he was deliberately hiding how much power his frame contained. "No one important," Cale said. "Don't lie to me." Connor stepped closer. Your scent is wrong.
Old.
Like something buried that crawled back out of the ground. His lip curled. What are you? For a long moment, Cale didn't answer. His face stayed blank, his body still. But Elena was standing close enough to see his hands. The fingers had curled slightly. The tendons in his wrists were tight. He was holding himself back. Barely. I'm Elena's husband, he finally said. That's all you need to know. Connor's eyes narrowed. He looked like he wanted to push further, to demand answers, to assert his authority over this stranger who refused to submit. But Vera's hand found his arm. Darling, let them go. We have better things to do than interrogate Elena's charity case. She steered Connor toward the door. He went, but his eyes stayed on Cale until the last moment, troubled and searching. Elena exhaled. They were almost out. Almost free. Then Cale moved. It was subtle, just a shift in trajectory as they walked toward the exit. He passed within inches of Connor, close enough to brush shoulders. Close enough to whisper. Elena was the only one near enough to hear the words. I remember you, Connor. I remember everything. Connor stopped mid-step. His face went white, not pale.
White.
Like every drop of blood had drained from his body in a single instant. His eyes went wide, his mouth opening and closing without sound, and he stared at Cale's retreating back like he was seeing a dead man walk. Because he was. Elena understood that now, even without knowing the details. Connor was looking at a ghost. And the ghost had come for him. Elena didn't speak until they were in the car, driving away from the Civic Center, away from Connor's stricken face and Vera's confusion and Marcus's contempt. Then she pulled over. What did you say to him? Cale stared out the windshield. Nothing important. Don't give me that. I saw his face. He looked like he was going to have a heart attack. What did you say? I told him I remembered. Remembered what? Silence. The engine idled. Outside, birds were starting to sing, oblivious to the earthquake happening inside Elena's chest. Cale turned to look at her. His gray eyes held something she hadn't seen before.
Pain.
Old and vast and carefully buried. Some things are better not knowing, Elena. Trust me on that. He got out of the car and walked toward her cottage. She watched him go, her hands trembling, her mind racing. She grabbed her phone. Her fingers moved before she could stop them. Search engine.
Keywords. Cale. Alpha.
Massacre. The results loaded. The headline was 5 years old, from every major news outlet in the Wolf Territories. Royal Vorn Pack massacred in midnight attack. Alpha King Cale Vorn, 24, confirmed dead among 200+ casualties. Elena's breath stopped. She scrolled to the photo. A younger man stared back at her. No scars. Clean-shaven. Dark hair neat and short. Eyes the color of gunmetal, sharp and proud and full of life. The same eyes that had watched her lie about her name in a dive bar. The same eyes that had studied Connor with barely concealed hatred. The same eyes that belonged to the man currently walking into her house. Alpha King.
Dead.
Except he wasn't dead. He was very much alive. And she had just married him. Elena stared at the photo until her vision blurred. The phone shook in her hands. The Alpha King of the Vorn Pack. The massacre that had horrified the wolf world 5 years ago. The attack that had come without warning, killed hundreds, ended a royal bloodline that stretched back centuries. Connor's father had been one of the alphas rumored to be involved. The investigation had gone nowhere. No one was ever charged. And now the dead king had returned. Wearing scars. Wearing shadows. Wearing the face of a stranger in a bar. He had used her. Her desperation. Her need, her willingness to buy a husband, without asking questions. He had used all of it to get inside Pack territory, to get close to Connor. Elena thought about the 3 dead rogues in the parking lot. For seconds. No hesitation. She thought about what he would do to Connor when the time came. She got out of the car and walked toward her house on legs that didn't feel like her own. She had wanted to save her mother. She had married death itself instead. If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. The cabin sat at the edge of packed territory like an afterthought. One bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The elders had assigned it to them with obvious contempt, the worst housing available, tucked against the treeline where the property met wilderness. Elena didn't care about the cabin. She cared about the man standing in its cramped living room, staring out the window at nothing. She slammed the door behind her. "Explain this." She shoved her phone toward him. The article filled the screen, that 5-year-old headline screaming in black and white. The photo of his younger face. The death toll. The massacre. Cale glanced at the phone. His expression didn't change. "You found it faster than I expected. Is it true?" Her voice cracked. "Are you him? The Alpha King?" He turned from the window. In the gray morning light, his scars looked deeper, older, like they had been carved into his face by time itself. "Yes." One word. No hesitation. No denial. Elena's legs gave out. She sank onto the threadbare couch, her phone slipping from her fingers, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. The Alpha King. The Dead King. The massacre that had sent shockwaves through every pack in the country. She had read about it as a teenager, horrified by the brutality, by the photos of burning buildings and body bags lined up in rows. 217 dead. Men, women, children. An entire bloodline erased in a single night. And the king who was supposed to have died with them was standing in her living room. "How?" she whispered. "They confirmed you were dead. They found a body." Cale's voice was flat. "They found a body that matched my description. There were many bodies that night. My beta, Marcus, dragged me into the river before they could finish the job. I floated downstream for miles. A human farmer found me on the bank 3 days later, more dead than alive." He moved to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water. His hands were steady.
His voice was steady.
Like he was recounting someone else's tragedy. "I spent 8 months learning to walk again. Another year learning to fight. The rest of the time I spent building." He drank. Set down the glass. "Gathering loyalists. Tracking down the wolves who betrayed my family. Planning." Planning what? Those gray eyes met hers. Cold. Ancient. Empty of everything except patience. Revenge. Elena's stomach turned. "Connor's father. The hunting accident last year. That was you." "Yes. You killed him. He earned his death. He was the one who opened the gates. Let the attackers inside while my family slept. He smiled while they burned." Cale's voice didn't waver, but something in the air grew heavier, darker. "I made sure he didn't smile at the end." Elena pressed a hand to her mouth. She had never liked Connor's father, a cold, brutal man who had terrified her even when she was engaged to his son. But hearing this, knowing what Cale had done, what he was capable of, and Connor? She forced the words out. "He's next. Isn't he?" Connor wasn't at the massacre. He was too young. But he knows what his father did. He's protected the other conspirators, covered their tracks, benefited from their crimes. Cale moved closer. Not threatening, just there, a dark presence filling the small room. "He doesn't get to profit from my family's ashes and walk away clean." Elena stared at him. The man she had married. The man she had thought was a desperate rogue willing to trade dignity for money. "You used me." The realization landed like a blow. You didn't need the money. You didn't care about the deal. You just needed a way into packed territory without raising suspicion. "Yes. You let me think I was buying a husband, but I was just your access pass." "Yes." No apology. No justification. Just the truth, laid bare and ugly between them. Elena stood. Her body was shaking. Whether from fear or fury, she couldn't tell. "How dare you?" "I trusted," she stopped. Laughed bitterly. "I didn't trust you. I never trusted you. But I thought we had a transaction. Something honest in its own twisted way. Instead, you've been playing me from the start." "I never lied to you." Cale's voice was quiet. "I told you I had reasons for wanting access. I told you they didn't concern you. Both of those things were true. You let me believe. I let you believe what you needed to believe to save your mother. He stepped closer. His presence was overwhelming, not physically threatening, but intense in a way that made the air feel thin. And she will be saved. I keep my promises. The healers will treat her. The elders will comply. Everything I told you would happen will happen. And then what? You kill Connor, start a war, burn down everything around you. If necessary. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to hit him, claw at that scarred face, make him feel even a fraction of the chaos he had brought into her life. But somewhere beneath the anger, a quieter voice whispered, "He's right." She hated the voice, hated herself for hearing it, but it kept whispering anyway. Connor rejected her, humiliated her, stood by while the elders condemned her mother to death. He had smiled while Elena collapsed on that marble floor, her bond shattering, her heart breaking, her future crumbling around her. Cale had used her, but at least he had been honest about what he was. Connor had pretended to love her. That was worse. "Why are you so angry at me?"
Cale asked.
The question was soft, almost curious. "I used your desperation to serve my purposes." Connor created that desperation in the first place. He rejected you publicly, shamed your family, blocked your mother's treatment out of pure spite. He tilted his head slightly. "But I'm the one you're furious at." "Why?" Elena opened her mouth to answer. Nothing came out, because she didn't have an answer.
Not one that made sense.
Cale nodded like her silence confirmed something. "You're angry at me because you can be. Because I'm standing here, and I admitted what I did, and that makes me an easy target." He moved toward the window again, turning his back to her. "Connor is harder to be angry at. You loved him. Part of you still does, even after what he did. It's easier to hate a stranger than to accept that someone you loved never deserved that love." The words hit like physical blows, each one finding a wound she hadn't known existed. "I don't love him." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Tell yourself that if you need to. But when this is over, when I've taken everything from him, you're going to have to decide what that means for you." Silence fell between them. Heavy. Charged. Elena sank back onto the couch. Her anger had drained away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "What do you want from me?" "Really?" Cale turned. Something shifted in his expression, not softening, but becoming more present. More real. "I want you to help me. Not as a pawn. As a partner." "Help you do what?" "Kill more people. Destroy the wolves who murdered my family and have spent 5 years profiting from it." 3 alphas planned the attack. Connor's father was the inside man. Another is already dead. He died badly, in a fire of his own making. The third is still hidden, still protected. I need access and information to find him. He moved closer, crouching in front of her, so their eyes were level. "In exchange, I'll give you something worth more than $50,000. My network includes healers who trained under the royal physicians, the best on the continent. Your mother won't just survive. She'll recover completely." Elena searched his face, looking for the lie, looking for the trap. "Why would you do that? You don't need to bargain with me anymore. You're already inside pack territory." "Because I was taught that power without honor is just brutality with better resources." For a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes. "And because you didn't deserve to be used. That doesn't change the fact that I used you, but it does mean I owe you something real in return." Elena didn't know what to say, didn't know what to feel. Her mother was dying. This man could save her. This man was also a killer, a ghost, a walking weapon aimed at everything she had once thought she wanted. "I need to think," she said finally.
Cale stood.
Nodded. "Take whatever time you need." "But Elena." He paused at the bedroom door. "Connor won't stop at rejection. He didn't exile your family out of indifference. He has reasons for wanting the Blackwood bloodline destroyed. Reasons I suspect even you don't fully understand." He disappeared into the bedroom, leaving her alone with questions that multiplied like shadows at dusk. The pack healers arrived 2 hours later. They were cold and perfunctory, but they came. Sanctuary laws forced their compliance, and Cale's presence as Elena's husband made refusal impossible. They hooked Margaret up to monitors, started 4 fluids, administered medications that should have been given days ago. Elena sat beside her mother's bed, holding the thin, cold hand that had once felt so strong. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I found a way. You're going to be okay." Margaret's eyes fluttered, opened. For a moment, she looked confused, disoriented by the machines, the tubes, the unfamiliar faces of the healers moving around her room. Then her gaze drifted to the doorway. Cale stood there, silent as always, watching. Margaret's face transformed. Not fear, not confusion. Something else entirely. Recognition. "You." Her voice was a rasp, barely audible. But her eyes had grown sharp, focused with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone so weak. "You have your father's eyes. The king's eyes." Elena froze. "Mom." Margaret wasn't listening. She was reaching toward Cale with trembling hands, her monitors beeping faster. "You're the one she was promised to, before they took everything." The words made no sense. Elena grabbed her mother's hand, trying to calm her. "Mom, what are you talking about? Promised? Who was promised?" Margaret's eyes found Elena's face. Tears spilled down her hollow cheeks. "You, baby. You were promised. Before you were born. Before they destroyed it all." "Promised to who? I don't understand." Margaret's gaze returned to Cale. Her hand stretched toward him, shaking. "The king's son. You were supposed to be his. The union that would heal everything. But they found out. They couldn't let it happen. So they killed them all, and they—" The monitors screamed. Margaret's eyes rolled back. Her body convulsed. The healers rushed forward, pushing Elena aside, shouting orders in medical jargon that blurred into meaningless noise. "Mom." Elena fought against the hands holding her back. "Mom." But Margaret was gone again. Unconscious. Machines breathing for her. And the words she had spoken hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had been burning for 20 years. "Promised. The king's son. You were supposed to be his." Elena turned to Cale. He stood in the doorway, his face unreadable, his gray eyes fixed on her mother's unconscious form. "Did you know?" Her voice shook. "Did you know about this?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "But I'm beginning to understand why they wanted your bloodline destroyed." Outside, the sun climbed higher over Silver Ridge. Inside, Elena realized that everything she thought she knew about her life was a lie. And the man she had married to save her mother might be the key to understanding why. If you're enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. The healers worked on Margaret for 3 hours. Elena sat in the kitchen, staring at cold coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Her mother's words echoed in her skull, rattling around like stones in an empty jar. "Promised. The king's son. You were supposed to be his." Cale stood at the window, his back to her, watching the tree lean. He hadn't moved since the healers had stabilized Margaret. Hadn't spoken. Elena couldn't take the silence anymore. "You said you didn't know." Her voice sounded strange in the quiet room. Hollow. "But you recognized something. When she said those words, I saw it in your face." Cale didn't turn around. "Before the massacre," he said slowly, "my family had been negotiating a union. Something ancient. Something that hadn't been done in centuries." "What kind of union?" "Royal alphas carry power in their blood. It's what makes us different from ordinary alphas, stronger, faster, more dominant. But there's a limit to how much power a single bloodline can hold." He finally turned. His gray eyes were distant, lost in memories. "Unless that bloodline is bonded to another." Elena's throat tightened. Another bloodline. The royal healers. They were a separate line, Omega dominant, with blood that could amplify an alpha's power instead of competing with it. The Blackwoods. The name landed like a punch. "That's impossible." Elena shook her head. "My family has been nothing for as long as I can remember. We've always been poor. Always been looked down on. There's nothing royal about. Because they made sure of it." Cale moved closer, his presence filling the small kitchen. The Blackwoods were hidden for their own protection. Your bloodline was too valuable to advertise. Too dangerous in the wrong hands. My father found your family through old records, old alliances. He spent years making contact, building trust. Trust for what? A union between our houses. An Omega daughter bonded to the Alpha heir. The combination would create something that hadn't existed in 500 years, a mated pair with enough power to unite every pack under a single rule. Peacefully. Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. Are you saying my family was supposed to? You were promised to me. Cale's voice was quiet. Matter of fact. When you were 4 years old, the formal bond would have happened when you came of age. My parents met with yours. Documents were signed. Everything was in place. For years old, Elena tried to remember being 4. Her father had still been alive then. They had lived in a different house, bigger, nicer. She remembered sunlight through tall windows, the smell of her mother's cooking, a sense of safety she had never felt again. Then her father had died, and everything had changed. The massacre happened before the bond could be formalized, Cale continued. Everyone assumed the arrangement died with my family. Without the Vorns, your bloodline was irrelevant. Just another disgraced Omega family with no prospects. But Connor's father knew. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. He knew what I was. He didn't just know. He orchestrated everything. The massacre wasn't only about power. It was about prevention. He couldn't allow the union to happen. A bonded Vorn-Blackwood pair would have made his ambitions impossible. Elena thought about her childhood, the poverty that had descended so suddenly after her father's death, the whispers that followed her through school, the way other wolves had looked at her, not just with disdain, but with something darker, like they were in on a secret she didn't understand. My father. The words scraped out of her throat. His death. Everyone said it was an accident, but I don't have proof. Cale's jaw tightened. But the timing is difficult to ignore. He died 6 months after the massacre. 6 months after the union became impossible. They killed him. Elena's vision blurred. They killed him because he knew. Because he could have told me the truth. I believe so, yes. 20 years. 20 years of disgrace and poverty, and looking over her shoulder without knowing why. 20 years of being told she was cursed, worthless, unwanted. All because of what she was. All because of what they had stolen from her. Elena pressed her hands to her face and screamed into her palms. The healers emerged an hour later. There were 2 of them, a man and a woman who had arrived separately from the pack medical team. Cale's people. The royal physicians he had promised. They didn't look like healers. They looked like soldiers, hard-eyed, efficient, with a kind of quiet confidence that came from years of training. The woman approached Elena first. Your mother is stable, but we need to talk about what we found. Elena's stomach dropped. Found. The healer glanced at Cale, received a small nod, and continued. The illness affecting your mother isn't natural. It's poison. A slow-acting compound called nightshade essence. It's derived from wolfsbane but modified to work gradually over years instead of hours. The symptoms mimic a dozen different diseases: fatigue, organ deterioration, immune suppression. Without knowing what to look for, any healer would miss it. The room tilted. Elena grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Poison, she repeated. Someone has been poisoning my mother. For at least 5 years, based on the tissue damage. Possibly longer. The healer's voice was clinical, detached. The compound is rare and expensive. It's only available to high-ranking pack members with access to specialized suppliers. High-ranking pack members. Connor. Elena thought about the pack healer who had refused to treat Margaret. The elder decree that had condemned them so quickly. The way Connor had watched her wedding with irritation, not triumph. Like, she had found a solution she wasn't supposed to find. He hadn't just rejected her. He had been killing her mother for years, ensuring Elena would grow more desperate, more isolated, more willing to accept any escape offered. including a mate bond with him. He planned this. Her voice sounded far away. The rejection wasn't spite.
It was strategy.
He wanted me broken, wanted me to have no options. So when he finally offered to take me back, you would have been grateful. Cale's voice was hard. You would have bonded with him willingly, given him access to your blood, your power, everything the Union was supposed to provide my family. He would have gotten everything his father killed for. Elena's legs gave out. She collapsed into the chair, her whole body shaking. All those years of loving him, all those years of believing the mate bond meant something. And he had been playing her the entire time, grooming her, weakening her, preparing her for a cage she would have walked into willingly. Can you save her? She looked at the healers. My mother. Can you stop the poison? The woman nodded. We have antidotes. The damage will take months to reverse, but she'll recover fully. We'll need to move her to a secure location where we can monitor. Do it. Elena stood. Her legs were steady now. Something had shifted inside her, the grief and confusion crystallizing into something harder, colder. Whatever you need, whatever it costs. Save her. The healers exchanged glances, then moved toward the bedroom to begin preparations. Elena turned to Cale. He was watching her with an expression she hadn't seen before. Not cold. Not calculating.
Something almost like respect.
You said you wanted a partner. Her voice didn't waver. Someone to help you destroy the wolves who did this. I'm in, Elena. Don't. She stepped closer, close enough to see the individual scars crossing his face. Don't tell me to think about it. Don't tell me it's dangerous. They killed your family. They killed my father. They've been poisoning my mother for years. They stole my entire life. Her hands curled into fists. I want them to pay. Every single one of them.
Connor.
The third conspirator. Anyone who knew and did nothing. I want them to feel what we've felt. Cale studied her for a long moment. This isn't a path you can walk back from, he said quietly. Once you choose this, once you step into the darkness with me, it changes you.
Permanently.
Good. Elena's smile felt sharp on her face. Unfamiliar. I'm tired of being the person they made me. Time to become someone they should have been afraid of. They spent the afternoon planning. Cale's network was larger than Elena had imagined. Loyalists scattered across a dozen territories, waiting for his signal. Spies embedded in packs throughout the region. Resources that rivaled what Connor had at his disposal. 5 years of preparation, all leading to this. But there was still the third conspirator. The Alpha who had remained hidden, protected by layers of secrecy that even Cale's spies hadn't penetrated. Without identifying him, the job remained unfinished. He's the one who provided the weapons, Cale explained, spreading a map across the kitchen table. Modified silver. Wolfsbane concentrates. Things that couldn't be acquired through normal channels. My father trusted the wrong people, and this Alpha exploited that trust. No leads at all. Suspicions. Possibilities. Nothing concrete. Frustration flickered across his scarred face. He's been careful. Stayed in the shadows while the others took the risks. Elena studied the map. Pack territories marked in different colors. The Vorn lands, now absorbed by neighboring packs, shaded in gray. Connor might know, she said. If his father was involved, if he's been protecting the conspirators, he has to know who the third one is. Getting that information from Connor won't be easy. He's paranoid. Surrounded by guards. And now that he knows something is wrong, he'll be even more careful. Cale's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen.
Froze.
Elena watched his face change. The careful blankness cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Something she had never seen in him before.
Shock.
What is it? Cale didn't answer. He was staring at the phone like it had turned into a snake.
Cale.
What is it? He handed her the phone. A message from an unknown number. Short and devastating. Tell the dead king I have information about the third conspirator. And tell him his sister's baby survived. Meet me tonight. Alone. V.S.
V.S.
Vera Sinclair. Elena looked up. She knows who you are. She's known since the wedding.
Cale's voice was strange, distant.
She must have recognized me somehow. I thought I was careful enough. But why hasn't she told Connor? I don't know. Elena read the message again. One phrase kept jumping out at her. His sister's baby survived. Your sister, she said slowly. The pregnant one. Everyone said she died in the massacre. She did. The words came out rough.
Broken.
I found her body myself. He stopped. Swallowed. She was 8 months along. There was no way the baby could have survived. But his hands were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough to show that beneath all that control, all that cold determination, there was still a man who had lost everyone he loved. A man who had just been told that maybe, he hadn't lost everything after all. It could be a trap, Elena said quietly. Vera could be working with Connor, trying to lure you into the open. I know. You're going to meet her anyway. It wasn't a question. She could see the answer in his eyes, the desperate hope he was trying to suppress, the need to know the truth even if it killed him. I have to know. His voice cracked.
Just barely.
Just enough. If there's even a chance, I have to know. Elena thought about what she would do if someone told her Margaret was still alive after believing her dead for 5 years. There was no calculation in the world that would stop her from finding out. Then I'm coming with you.
No.
She said alone. I don't care what she said. You're my husband, remember? The word felt strange on her tongue. Real in a way it hadn't been before. Where you go, I go. That's the deal. Cale looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. The walls coming down, just a fraction. You're not what I expected, Elena Blackwood. Neither are you, Your Majesty. The title hung between them, weighted with history and loss and the faintest shimmer of something new. Outside, the sun was setting over Silver Ridge. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, they would find out if ghosts could have families after all. If you're enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. The abandoned church sat 3 miles outside packed territory, its steeple broken, its windows dark. Cale arrived first. He had insisted Elena stay behind, and for once, she hadn't argued. Something about the message, the desperation underneath Vera's careful words, had convinced him this wasn't a trap. At least, not the kind he was expecting. Vera emerged from the shadows like she had been born in them. No red dress tonight. No sharp smile. She wore black, her dark hair pulled back, her face stripped of the cruel beauty she wore like armor around Connor. She looked younger, smaller, afraid. You came alone. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would trust me. I don't. Cale kept his distance, his body positioned between her and the door. But I needed to hear what you have to say. Vera nodded slowly. She moved to a broken pew, sat down heavily, like the weight of years had finally caught up with her. I was 11 years old when they attacked your family. Cale went still. My mother was a servant in Connor's household. We lived in the East Wing, in the servants' quarters. I was supposed to be asleep that night, but I heard the men talking, planning. Her hands twisted in her lap. I didn't understand most of it, just that something bad was going to happen. Something they were excited about. You witnessed it. Parts of it. Connor's father took me with him when they went to your compound. He said I needed to learn what happened to people who stood in the way of progress. Her voice cracked. I watched them kill your mother first. She was trying to protect the children. Stop. The word came out sharper than Cale intended. He forced himself to breathe, to stay present. Vera fell silent, waited. Why did he keep you? Cale asked finally. Why not kill you with the others? Because I was useful, a witness who could be controlled. He kept me as a trophy, reminder to my mother of what would happen if she ever spoke about what she knew. Vera's laugh was bitter, broken. When I turned 18, he gave me to Connor as a wedding gift. A silent bride who knew better than to open her mouth. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Vera's cruelty, her sharp edges, her desperate grip on status and power. They weren't ambition. They were survival.
"You've been waiting for this," Cale said.
For 5 years. Every night, I've prayed someone would come. Someone strong enough to destroy them. She looked up, her eyes wet. When I saw you at that wedding, I knew. Even with the scars, even with the years, I knew those eyes. The king's eyes. Why didn't you expose me? Because I want them dead more than I want anything else in this world. And you're the only one who can do it. Cale studied her face, searching for the lie. Finding only exhaustion. Only truth. The third conspirator, he said. You said you have information. Vera nodded. Elder Marcus. The name hit like a physical blow. Marcus. The man who had officiated Elena's wedding. The man who had sneered at her throughout the ceremony, who had served Connor's family for decades. He was the inside man, Vera continued. The one who opened the gates during the peace summit. Your guards trusted him. He had been negotiating between the pacts for months. No one suspected. Marcus. Right under his nose. Performing his marriage ceremony like it was nothing. Cale's hands curled into fists. You're certain? I heard Connor's father thank him, personally. The night after the massacre. They toasted to their success, while I served their drinks. 5 years of searching. 5 years of dead ends and false leads. And the answer had been standing at a podium, smirking at his wife. There's more. Vera's voice dropped. Your sister. Lydia. Every muscle in Cale's body locked. She went into labor during the attack. The stress, the fear, it triggered early delivery. One of the servants, a woman named Mara, helped her give birth in a hidden cellar while the fighting raged above. The baby. A girl. Healthy, despite everything. Mara smuggled her out through the servant tunnels. By the time Connor's father found Lydia's body, the baby was already gone. Cale couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
The world had narrowed to a single point. Vera's face, her words, the impossible hope blooming in his chest. Where? His voice was barely human. A human family. Mara had connections outside Pact territory. She placed the child with a couple who couldn't have children of their own. Changed her name. Buried all records. Where is she now? Vera pulled a folded paper from her pocket. Held it out. She's 4 years old. Her name is Sophie. She lives 2 hours north of here, in a town called Millbrook. Cale took the paper. His hands were shaking. He, who had killed 3 wolves without trembling, couldn't hold a piece of paper steady. His sister's daughter. His blood.
Alive.
Why are you telling me this? His voice broke on the words. What do you want in return? Vera stood, moved closer. Her eyes were fierce now, burning with something that looked almost like hunger. I want to watch Connor die. I want to see the fear in his eyes when he realizes everything he built is crumbling. I want him to know that the woman he treated like property is the one who destroyed him. She reached up, touched Cale's scarred face gently. Give me that, Your Majesty, and I'll give you everything you need to burn them all to the ground. Elena couldn't sleep. She had promised to wait, to stay safe in the cabin while Cale met with Vera. But the hours stretched endless, and her mind wouldn't stop racing, and somewhere in the restless pacing, she had remembered the box. Her father's things. The few possessions her mother had saved after his death, packed away in a trunk that hadn't been opened in 15 years. Elena found it in the back of her mother's closet, buried under blankets and forgotten clothes. The lock was rusted but gave way with some effort. Inside, photographs, letters, a pocket watch that no longer worked. The detritus of a life cut short. And, at the bottom, a leather journal. Elena opened it with trembling fingers. Her father's handwriting filled the pages, notes, observations, mundane details of pack life. But as she flipped deeper, the entries changed. Became frantic. Coded. They're planning something. The alliance isn't what it seems. Hayes is meeting with the others again. M and someone I haven't identified. They talk about the summit like it's already over. I tried to warn V. Sent word through the old channels. No response. Either he didn't receive it, or he doesn't believe me. Found proof. Documents, showing weapons shipments. Modified silver. Enough to arm a small army. Hayes is preparing for war, not peace. They know I know. M confronted me today. Said I should mind my own business if I wanted my family to stay healthy. The look in his eyes, he meant it. The entries stopped abruptly. The next page was blank. And the next. And every page after that. Elena checked the date on the final entry. 3 days before her father died. She sat on the floor of her mother's closet, surrounded by dusty memories, and wept. Her father hadn't died in an accident. He had been murdered. Killed because he tried to warn the Vorns, tried to stop the massacre before it happened. And someone had made it look like suicide. She thought about her mother's slow decline, the poison working through her system for years, the disgrace that had followed them like a curse, the systematic destruction of everything her family had been. They hadn't just killed the Vorns. They had destroyed everyone who might have saved them. Elena gathered the journal, the letters, every scrap of evidence she could find.
Proof.
Real proof that could expose Marcus, implicate Connor, bring everything into the light. She had to tell Cale. The cabin was dark when she arrived. Elena's instincts screamed warning before her brain caught up. The door was ajar. The lights were off. Something was wrong. She pushed inside. Furniture overturned. The kitchen table flipped on its side. A lamp shattered on the floor, glass scattered across the worn carpet. And blood. Dark spots of it trailing from the living room toward the back door. Cale? Silence. Elena followed the blood trail with her heart pounding in her throat. Through the kitchen. Out the back door. The trail ended at the treeline, disappearing into darkness. She turned back, searching for any clue, any sign of what had happened. That's when she saw the note, pinned to the wall with a kitchen knife. The paper was expensive, cream-colored, embossed with a crest she recognized. Connor's crest. Her hands shook as she pulled it free. The dead should stay dead, Your Majesty. Come to the old mill at midnight. Alone. Or your little bride joins your family in the ground.
See.
Elena read it 3 times. Each time, the words hit harder. Connor had Cale. Somehow he had found out. Somehow he had gotten to Cale before Vera's information could make a difference. And now he was using her as leverage. She looked at the clock on the wall. Just past 10. Less than 2 hours until midnight. Less than 2 hours to decide. The smart thing, the safe thing would be to run. Take her mother and disappear. Use Cale's network to hide, to heal, to build a new life somewhere far from Connor's reach. Cale would understand. He had used her first, after all. Their marriage was a transaction, nothing more. She owed him nothing. But even as she thought it, she knew it was a lie. He had saved her mother, told her the truth about her bloodline, given her back a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. And somewhere in the chaos of the last few days, the transaction had become something else. Something she couldn't name but couldn't ignore. She thought about Connor, waiting at the mill.
Smug. Certain.
Believing he had already won. She thought about Cale, bleeding in some dark room, paying the price for trusting the wrong moment. She thought about her father, who had tried to do the right thing and died for it. Elena looked at the journal in her hands. The proof that could change everything. Then she looked at the note. The deadline. The impossible choice. Run and survive. Or walk into a trap for a man she barely knew. She grabbed her keys. The mill was 20 minutes away. She would figure out the rest on the drive. If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. Elena didn't run. She sat in her car outside the cabin, engine idling, hands gripping the wheel so hard her knuckles ached. Every rational thought screamed at her to drive, north, south, anywhere but toward the mill and the monster waiting inside. But rationality had stopped meaning anything the moment she saw the blood on the floor. She pulled out her phone, dialed the number Cale had given her for emergencies. Vera answered on the second ring. He's been taken. Elena's voice was steady.
Cold.
She didn't recognize it. Connor has him. The old mill. Midnight deadline. Silence. Then, how long ago? I don't know. Maybe 2 hours. There was a struggle. Blood. Vera exhaled sharply. Connor must have had people watching, waiting for Cale to be alone. Can you help? Not directly. Connor has eyes on me constantly, but there's something you should know. Vera's voice dropped. Cale has an army. 200 wolves, waiting outside pack borders. They've been preparing for 5 years. Elena's heart stuttered. Why haven't they moved? They won't. Not without Cale's direct command or confirmation of his death. Those are his standing orders. He didn't want to start a war by accident. 200 wolves. Enough to overwhelm Connor's forces, tear down his compound, and everything in a single bloody night. But also enough to kill hundreds of innocents. Pack members who had nothing to do with the conspiracy. Families. Children. How do I contact them? There's a frequency. A code phrase. Cale set it up years ago. Vera recited both, made Elena repeat them back. But understand what you're doing. Once you trigger that army, there's no calling them back. They'll sweep through Silver Ridge like a wildfire. Everyone who stands in their way dies. Elena closed her eyes. 2 choices. Sneak into the mill alone, try to free Cale against impossible odds. Or trigger the army and guarantee his rescue at the cost of a bloodbath. She thought about her father, who had tried to warn the Vorns and died for it. She thought about the world those conspirators had built on ashes and lies. She thought about becoming the kind of person who could sacrifice hundreds for one. There's one more thing, Vera said. I have something that might help.
A key.
It unlocks silver chains, standard pack issue. Connor uses them for prisoners. How do I get it? There's a dead drop behind the old church. I'll leave it there. But Elena. Vera's voice hardened. If you're going into that mill alone, you need to understand what you're walking into. Connor isn't just going to kill Cale. He's going to break him first. Make him suffer. By the time midnight comes, there might not be anything left to save. Elena opened her eyes, looked at the clock on her dashboard. 11:15. 45 minutes. Leave the key. She hung up. The old mill rose against the night sky, like a rotting giant. It had been abandoned for decades, its wooden walls warped and gray, its machinery rusted into sculptures of forgotten industry. Connor had chosen well. Remote. Defensible. Far enough from pack territory that screams wouldn't carry. Elena had parked a mile out and approached on foot, moving through the treeline with a silence born of desperation. The key from Vera sat heavy in her pocket, small, silver, unremarkable. Her only weapon against whatever waited inside. 2 guards flanked the main entrance. She counted 4 more patrolling the perimeter.
Too many to fight.
Too many to sneak past without perfect timing. She found a side door, half hidden behind collapsed scaffolding. The lock was rusted but functional. She worked at it with a hairpin, the way her father had taught her when she was 12 and fascinated by his lockpicking hobby. Everything has a weakness, he had said. You just have to find it. The lock clicked. The door swung inward. The smell hit her first.
Blood.
Wolfsbane. Something burnt that she didn't want to identify. Elena pressed her hand over her mouth and moved deeper into the darkness. The mill's interior was a maze of abandoned equipment and rotting wood. She followed the sounds, voices low and cruel, punctuated by something that might have been laughter. And underneath it all, a sound that made her blood turn to ice. Screaming. Muffled.
Male. Cale.
She found a position behind a rusted conveyor belt, looking down into what had once been the main processing floor. And she saw what Connor had done. Cale hung from chains in the center of the room. Silver chains, wrapped around his wrists, his ankles, his throat. Everywhere they touched, his skin had blackened and blistered. His body was a map of destruction, bones bent at wrong angles, cuts that still oozed sluggishly, burn marks that formed deliberate patterns. They had been torturing him for hours.
Systematically.
Professionally. And he was still alive. His head hung forward, his dark hair matted with blood. But as Elena watched, he raised his face slightly. Those gray eyes, dulled with pain but still burning with something unbroken, swept the room. Still defiant. Still fighting. Connor stood before him in an immaculate suit, looking like he had stepped out of a board meeting rather than a torture chamber. 6 of his wolves flanked him, watching their alpha toy with the broken king. "You really thought you could just walk back into my territory?" Connor's voice was conversational, amused. "After all these years? Did you think no one would notice?" Kale spat blood at his feet.
Connor didn't flinch.
Just smiled. "My father always said your family's problem was arrogance. You thought your bloodline made you special, untouchable. But here's the truth, Your Majesty." He leaned closer. "You were just obstacles. Speed bumps on the road to real power. Your father," Kale's voice was a ragged whisper, "died squealing, like a pig." The first real flash of anger crossed Connor's face. His hand shot out, gripping Kale's jaw, forcing his head up. "Where's your army? I know you have one. Loyalists scattered across the territories, waiting for your signal. Tell me where they are, and I'll make this quick." Kale's bloody lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Go to hell." Connor's fist connected with his face.
Once. Twice. 3 times.
When he stepped back, his knuckles were red and Kale's head lolled forward again. "The old ways are dying," Connor said, straightening his jacket. "The councils. The bloodlines. The traditions that kept wolves like my family in the shadows while your kind ruled from golden thrones. I'm building something new. Something better. And when I'm done, no one will even remember the name Vorn." He turned to one of his wolves. "Increase the wolfsbane dosage. If he hasn't talked by midnight, we move to the final phase." Elena watched them prepare another injection. Watched Kale's body jerk against the chains. Watched the monster who had stolen everything continue to smile like this was all just entertainment. She thought about the army waiting outside pack borders. The frequency. The code phrase. She thought about the hundreds who would die. Then she stepped out of the shadows. "Stop." Every head in the room turned. Connor's eyes widened, then narrowed with something that looked almost like pleasure. "Elena." He said her name like he was tasting it. "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Let him go." "And why would I do that?" Elena forced herself to walk forward, to keep her voice steady, to not look at Kale, not yet, because if she saw the ruin of him up close she might shatter. "Because you want something more than his death. You always have." Connor tilted his head. "Go on. My bloodline. The healer's blood. That's why you were going to bond with me in the first place. That's why you kept my mother sick for years, to make me desperate enough to accept you." She stopped 10 feet from him, close enough to see the interest kindling in his eyes. "You can still have it, Elena." Kale's voice was barely audible. "Don't." She ignored him, kept her eyes on Connor. "Let him go. Take me instead. I'll bond with you willingly. Give you everything you wanted. You'll be more powerful than any alpha in 500 years. Connor studied her. The calculation was visible, weighing her value against the satisfaction of killing Kale slowly. "How do I know you won't fight? Won't try to sabotage the bond? Because if you hurt him anymore, if you kill him, I'll tear out my own throat before I let you touch me." Her voice didn't waver. "But if you let him go, I'll be the perfect mate. Obedient.
Loyal.
Everything you wanted." The silence stretched. Connor's wolves shifted uneasily, looking to their alpha for guidance. Finally, Connor smiled. "Chain her next to him. We'll let the dead king watch while I claim his bride." Hands grabbed Elena. She didn't resist as they dragged her toward the chains, as they locked silver around her wrists. The metal burned, but nothing like what Kale had endured. They positioned her beside him, close enough to touch, close enough to reach his chains. "Elena." Kale's voice was agonized. "Why?" She turned her head, met his eyes, and let him see her hand moving toward his wrist, the key glinting between her fingers. His eyes widened. Connor was still talking, something about the new era, the power he would wield, the dynasty he would build. His wolves watched him with the glazed attention of those who had heard it all before. No one was watching Elena. The key slid into the lock on Cale's wrist chain.
Turned. Click.
What happened next wasn't a fight. The chains fell away, and Cale moved. Not like a man who had been tortured for hours. Not like a body that had been broken and burned and poisoned. He moved like something ancient, something that had been sleeping inside him and was finally terribly awake. The first wolf died before he could draw breath to scream. The second managed a yelp before his throat opened. The third, fourth, fifth, they fell in a cascade of blood and snapping bones, cut down by something that no longer looked entirely human. Cale's beast was unleashed. Not the controlled shift of a normal alpha, but something deeper. Older. His form rippled between man and wolf, neither and both, a creature of shadow and fury that painted the walls red. 6 wolves. 8 seconds. Connor ran. He was through the back door before Cale finished, disappearing into the night with the survival instinct of all true cowards. Then Cale collapsed. Elena caught him before he hit the ground, his weight driving her to her knees. Blood soaked through her clothes, his and theirs, and his body was so broken she didn't know how he was still breathing.
Cale.
Cale, stay with me. His eyes fluttered open. Gray storms, fading. Coordinates. The word was barely a breath. Army. 42, 18 north. He gave her the rest in fragments. Numbers and letters that she seared into her memory. The code phrase. She was crying now, she realized. What's the code phrase? His hand found hers. Squeezed once. The king has risen. His eyes closed. Elena knelt in the blood of his enemies, holding the broken body of the man she had bought for $50,000, and knew what she had to do. She pulled out her phone, dialed the frequency Vera had given her, spoke the words. The king has risen. Silence. Then a voice, low and deadly, confirmed. We move at dawn. Elena ended the call. In the distance, she could hear Connor's wolves regrouping, calling for reinforcements. The hunt would start soon. But dawn was coming, and with it an army. If you're enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. The army was waiting in the darkness. Elena had driven through the night with Cale bleeding in her passenger seat, following coordinates that led to a valley 3 miles past pack borders. She expected a camp. Tents. Some semblance of organization. What she found was a silent sea of wolves. 200 of them, spread across the valley floor like shadows given form. They didn't move when her headlights swept across them.
Didn't speak.
Just watched with eyes that reflected the moonlight like scattered coins. She stopped the car, got out on legs that trembled. A man approached, older, gray-haired, with a face that looked carved from granite. He studied her for a long moment, then looked past her to the figure slumped in the passenger seat. The king? Alive. Barely. He needs healers.
Now.
The man, Marcus's beta, she would learn later, one of the few who had survived the massacre, barked orders. Wolves materialized from the darkness, lifting Cale's broken body with surprising gentleness, carrying him toward a medical tent she hadn't noticed. You gave the code phrase. The beta's voice was neutral. Waiting. He gave it to me. Before he lost consciousness. Then you speak with his authority. It wasn't a question. What are your orders? Elena looked at the army. At the wolves who had waited 5 years for this moment. Who had trained and planned and dreamed of vengeance while the world forgot they existed. She thought about Connor, regrouping in Silver Ridge. About the reinforcements he was calling. About the war that was coming whether she wanted it or not. Silver Ridge falls tonight. The beta smiled. It was not a kind expression. Finally. The battle was swift and brutal. Connor's pack had numbers, but they had grown soft on corruption and cruelty. They had spent years oppressing the weak instead of training for real combat. When Cale's wolves hit their borders at dawn, the defense crumbled like wet paper. Elena stayed with the medical unit, watching the reports come in. Outpost fallen. Guard station overrun. The pack house surrounded. Connor's wolves surrendered in waves. Some fought, died quickly, and were forgotten. But most threw down their weapons the moment they realized what they faced, not just an army, but a reckoning. Wolves who had lost everything fighting wolves who had taken everything. There was only ever going to be one outcome. By noon, Silver Ridge was secured. The elders who had enabled Connor's family for decades were dragged from their homes in chains. Marcus, Elder Marcus, the inside man, the traitor who had opened the gates, was found hiding in his basement, clutching documents he thought would buy his freedom. They didn't. But Connor himself had vanished. Elena knew where he would go. The tunnels beneath the pack house, the same tunnels his father had used to let assassins into the Vorn compound 20 years ago. The same escape route that had been built into the foundation like a coward's insurance policy. She went alone. The tunnels were dark and damp, carved through bedrock generations ago. Emergency lighting flickered along the walls, casting everything in sickly yellow. Elena moved quietly, following the sound of footsteps ahead. Connor wasn't being subtle. He was running, panicked, his usual composure shattered by the speed of his empire's collapse. She found him at a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. He had stopped, chest heaving, trying to remember which path led to freedom. Wrong turn.
Connor spun.
Elena stood in the center of the tunnel, blocking his retreat. She was covered in dirt and dried blood, Kale's mostly, her hair tangled, her clothes ruined. She looked nothing like the desperate Omega who had stood before him at their wedding. She looked like something far more dangerous. Connor laughed. The sound echoed off the stone walls, high and brittle. You, he straightened, forcing confidence back into his posture. You're going to stop me? An Omega? A Blackwood? Yes. With what? He spread his arms. You have no weapons. No wolves. No power. You're nothing, Elena. You've always been nothing. Elena smiled. It was not a kind expression. You spent 20 years trying to control my bloodline, she said, walking toward him. Killing the Vorns so the union couldn't happen. Murdering my father when he tried to warn them. Poisoning my mother to keep me desperate and dependent. Connor's smile faltered. You did all of that because you knew what I was worth, what my blood could do. She stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to see the fear starting to bloom in his eyes. But you never actually understood it. Stay back. Royal healer blood is a gift. It amplifies, strengthens, heals. Elena raised her hand, palm up. But every gift has a shadow. Every power can be inverted. She drew a small knife from her belt, one of Kale's, taken from the medical tent. The blade bit into her palm, and blood welled up, dark and gleaming. What are you doing? Connor stumbled backward. Stay away from me. My ancestors didn't just heal kings, Connor. They protected them. And sometimes, protection meant making sure their enemies could never hurt anyone again. She lunged. Connor was faster, stronger, trained for combat in ways she had never been. But he was also terrified, off balance, and completely unprepared for what she did next. She didn't try to fight him, didn't try to match his strength. She simply pressed her bleeding palm to his face. The effect was immediate. Connor screamed as her blood touched his skin, seeping into his pores, entering his system. His body locked up, muscles seizing, nerves firing in cascading failure. He collapsed against the tunnel wall, sliding down until he sat in the dirt, his eyes wide with horror. He could still see, still hear, still feel everything. But he couldn't move.
Couldn't speak.
Couldn't do anything except exist inside a body that no longer obeyed him. A living prison. Elena crouched beside him, watched the terror in his frozen eyes. You wanted my bloodline so badly, she whispered. Now you have it. She stood, looked down at the man who had stolen her life, her family, her future. Kale's wolves will find you soon. What happens after that isn't my concern. She walked away without looking back. Behind her, Connor's screams echoed only in his mind. 3 months later, the throne room had been rebuilt. Where fire and blood had once consumed the Vorn palace, new walls rose in gleaming white stone. The throne itself was simple, carved wood, no gold or jewels, because Cale had insisted that symbols mattered less than substance. Elena stood beside him as the last of the delegates filed out, their treaties signed, their allegiances renewed. The pacts were healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing. "You're brooding." Cale's voice pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to find him watching her, those gray eyes soft in a way they never were in public. "I'm thinking," she corrected. "There's a difference." Is there? 3 months of recovery had given him back most of what Connor had taken. The bones had healed. The burns had faded. The wolfsbane had been purged from his system. But the scars remained on his body, his face, his soul. He wore them without shame. Said they reminded him of what he had survived. Elena thought they made him more beautiful, but she hadn't told him that yet. "I was thinking about my mother," she said. "The healers say she'll be strong enough to travel next month. She wants to see the palace. She's welcome anytime. She's family." Family. The word still felt strange. 3 months ago, Elena had been a rejected Omega with a dying mother and no future. Now she was queen of the largest pack alliance in 3 centuries. The mate bond had awakened the night after the battle. Neither of them had expected it. The connection that had been promised when they were children, dormant through decades of separation and tragedy. It had bloomed between them like a sunrise, undeniable and overwhelming. They had chosen to formalize it anyway. A proper ceremony. A real wedding. Not a transaction in a concrete room, but a celebration witnessed by thousands. Elena still had the ring from the first wedding. She wore it on a chain around her neck, a reminder of where they had started. "Elena." Cale moved closer, his hand finding hers. "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "Any of it. Paying a stranger in a bar. Marrying a dead man. Getting pulled into a war you never asked for." She considered the question. Really considered it. She thought about the terror of that first night in the Red Fong Tavern. The horror of discovering who she had married. The agony of watching him tortured. The fury of confronting Connor. The weight of commanding an army to war. She thought about her father's journal, now preserved in the palace archives. Her mother's recovery, slow but steady. The life she had now. Purpose, power, partnership with a man who saw her as an equal. She thought about who she had been before and who she had become after. "No," she said finally. "I'd do it again. All of it." Cale's scarred face softened. "Even the part where I lied to you?" "You didn't lie. You just didn't tell me the whole truth." She squeezed his hand. "There's a difference." "Is there?" She smiled, rose on her toes to kiss the corner of his mouth. "Ask me again in 50 years. Maybe I'll have changed my mind by then." He laughed, a real laugh, rare and precious, and pulled her close. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, watching the sun set over their kingdom through the tall windows. A knock interrupted them. Vera entered, her face transformed from the brittle mask she had worn for years into something softer. Hopeful. She wasn't alone. A child clung to her hand. A girl, for years old, with dark hair and gray eyes that Elena recognized immediately. Cale's sister's eyes. "Your Majesties." Vera's voice was thick. "May I present Sophie Vorn, your niece." The girl looked up at Cale with a solemnity that seemed impossible for her age. She had been told, Elena knew, about her heritage. About the family she had lost before she could remember them. About the uncle who had come back from the dead to find her. Cale knelt slowly, brought himself to her level. His hands were shaking. This man who had killed dozens without trembling, who had faced torture without breaking. "Hello, Sophie." The girl studied his scarred face, reached out with small fingers to trace the line that ran from his temple to his jaw. "You look like the picture," she said. "The one Mama Mara showed me, but different." "I've changed a lot since then. She said you were a king, that you went away, but you'd come back someday." Sophie's eyes were ancient in her young face. "Are you really my family?" Cale's voice broke.
"Yes."
"I really am." Sophie considered this. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her small arms around his neck. "Okay, she said simply. "I was waiting for you." Elena watched her husband, her mate, her king, hold his sister's child for the first time. Watched the tears stream down his scarred face. Watched the last broken piece of him finally click into place.
His family wasn't gone.
It was just beginning again. I know you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Drop your thoughts in the comment section and share this video to family and friends.
The end.